Ah, Martine. Okay, Martine told us that we had to start in French. So here it goes. It's very short. Don't miss it. Bonjour, Emily.
Bonjour, Donna.
Done. Sorry, that's it. So, Emily, they invited us here today to introduce someone to this crowd. Someone called Dr. Juliette Cooper.
Juliette Cooper?
Oh, Archie! Now her we can tell you something about.
Juliette Hamilton was born in the early 40s in Chilliwack, British Columbia. She spent a great deal of her early life traveling as her family followed her father's engineering career in geology and mining. First, small northern towns in Manitoba, including Herb Lake, Wekusko, and God's Lake.
We're talking small towns here.
And then on to Red Lake, Ontario, a comparative small metropolis. During this time, Archie was homeschooled by her mother, which is perhaps where she first learned about the importance of listening closely to others, was role modeled about mentorship, and where she developed early skills in self-directed learning. It was interesting to us to discover that Archie has family roots in both Quebec and Manitoba, and is a distant relative to Louis Riel, which might explain her innate sense of justice and her outspoken commitment to any cause needing attention.
When Archie was 7 years old, her family moved to Bolivia, where they lived for 3 years before moving to Peru. While living in South America, Archie's educational experience shifted from being homeschooled to attending local schools. She graduated in 1958 from Colegio San Silvestre. As might be expected during this time, did I say that right, Archie? As might be expected during this time in South America, Archie became fully fluent in Spanish, and to this day can carry out a mean conversation on Espanol. We also understand that she lived through an earthquake or two during this time, and maybe that's when she first developed the skills needed to face the many administrative challenges of her future. You know, like stand strong in the face of disaster.
Or perhaps to run like mad and find cover. In 1958, Archie returned to Canada to complete her high school education and lived with her grandparents in Scarborough, Ontario. She graduated from R.H. King Collegiate in 1960, and then it was on to OT. Archie entered the Physical and Occupational Therapy program at the University of Toronto in 1960, graduating with her diploma in 1963. She was officially a DIP P&OT, DIP Pot. Can you think of a more prestigious credential? Sorry, all you dip pots.
I should tell you that Archie hasn't seen these pictures yet. She's up here going. Here comes another one. A famous blind date in 1963 resulted in her meeting the man of her dreams, John Cooper. Some of you met him last night. He was one of our auctioneers. They married in 1964, and the traveling continued. Toronto, Kingston, Hamilton, Texas, and finally in 1968, Winnipeg. What a great place to settle down. And we're glad she did. During her travels, Archie worked as an occupational therapist at the Toronto Rehabilitation Center and the Kingston and Hamilton psychiatric hospitals. In Texas, she was a consultant occupational therapist in a private school, where we learned she also taught social studies and French. Who knew she had so many talents? Add on to that the role of mother, as John and Archie welcomed their two daughters into the family, Pilar in 1965 and Liz in 1969. Hence began Archie's amazing ability to multitask.
Archie's family is her center. John, their two daughters, their husbands, her granddaughter, and of course the family dog. In the early days, Archie and the family would camp and hike the mountains. Now Archie takes pleasure in her trips to Ottawa to visit Pilar, Greg, and Sean, and her weekend family dinners with Liz and Gary. She takes great pride in her accomplished family. Her favorite outdoor activity is walking the dog, which she does faithfully and daily. It is her quiet time, her downtime, often her time of great thought. In her spare time, Archie loves to travel, to read and do crossword puzzles. History is a favorite subject. How many people do you know who have actually read all 4 volumes of Churchill's A History of English-Speaking Peoples or his 6-volume set of World War II?
Now that we've told you a little bit about Archie's early years and her family life, let us fast forward a few years and tell you a little bit about why Dr. Juliette Cooper has been awarded the Muriel Driver Lecture.
Dr. Cooper is currently Professor Emeritus in the School of Medical Rehabilitation at the University of Manitoba, a senior scholar in the Office of the University Secretary, a professor in the Department of Human Anatomy and Cell Science, as well as in the Department of Community Health Sciences. Dr. Cooper began lecturing in the Department of Occupational Therapy after 10 years working as a clinician. She immersed herself in the world of academia and, recognizing the importance of lifelong learning, soon thereafter earned her bachelor's degree in occupational therapy, her Master of Science in Human Anatomy, and later went on to complete a PhD in Human Anatomy. In Manitoba, Archie is known as a trailblazer, a professional role model. She was among the first of Manitoba's OT community to achieve or attain a master's degree and was the first to attain her PhD.
Dr. Cooper is a preeminent occupational therapy scholar in Manitoba and Canada, with a research program focused on the fields of work disability prevention, biomechanics, and kinematics. Her numerous projects have attracted close to $3 million in funding and have been published widely in journals, books, refereed, peer-reviewed refereed journals, and invited presentations. Not only an active researcher, Dr. Cooper has also been instrumental nationally, provincially, and locally in promoting and establishing partnerships to advance research in occupational therapy, rehabilitation, disability studies, and health. For example,
8 years as a mentor in the CIHR Work Disability Prevention Strategic Training Program.
Since 2006, has represented CAOT at Research Canada as a board member and chair of the membership committee.
5 years as chair of the advisory board of the CIHR Institute of Health and Arthritis, where she was acknowledged by the scientific director, Dr. Cy Frank, for, and I quote, her ability to serve as role model for the whole committee and for her ethically sound and inclusive leadership style.
Board member and chair of the Allocations Committee of the Children's Rehabilitation Foundation, where she spearheaded the establishment of a research mentor for occupational therapists in child health.
A 5-year term on the Manitoba Medical College Foundation.
Chair of the Allied Health Grant Review Committee of the Health Sciences Foundation.
Dr. Cooper has devoted much time during her career to giving back to the profession of occupational therapy. She has held many positions in the College of Occupational Therapists in Manitoba and the Manitoba Society of Occupational Therapists, making significant contributions to the development of the profession within Manitoba. In 1998, Dr. Cooper received the MSOT Outstanding Occupational Therapist Award. That was the first time that was offered. In 2003, she was invited to give the inaugural COTF Lunch with a Scholar presentation, which is now a tradition. Dr. Cooper served on the CJOT Review Board from 1984 to 1992 and as the Scientific Conference co-chair for the 1989 CAOT Conference in Winnipeg. She currently serves as Vice President of the COTF Board and in 2009 was the recipient of the CAOT Fellowship Award.
Dr. Cooper's career at the University of Manitoba spans over 35 years and includes a record of exemplary participation at every possible level of academic life. Faculty member in occupational therapy, appointments in community health sciences, engineering, and human anatomy and cell science, acting department head in occupational therapy, director of the School of Medical Rehabilitation, and associate dean of applied health in the Faculty of Medicine. Senator for 16 years, including chair of the Senate Planning and Priorities Committee and the Curriculum and Course Change Committee of Senate. She served for 6 years on the University Board of Governors. So I guess the only question is, when are you going to be president? Within the University of Manitoba, Dr. Cooper is highly regarded and sought out by the highest levels of administration. For example, since her retirement, she was asked to serve as interim dean of the Faculty of Music and is now a mentor for many new incoming deans. Most recently, she was asked to chair an important committee of Senate to examine accommodations and governance procedures for students with disabilities. The resultant substantial guiding document, already known as the Cooper Report, will produce groundbreaking change as its recommendations roll out.
As a teacher, Dr. Cooper is held in the highest regard by her students and colleagues within and external to the profession. Several decades of students have had the great pleasure of having her as their teacher and mentor, and remark on the profound influence she has had on their ability to seek understanding and to think critically. Students describe her as a teacher extraordinaire who provides them with the tools they need to fly on their own. She is the ultimate cheerleader and the first person to celebrate others' accomplishments. Archie's enthusiasm for teaching and learning is contagious. Any topic can come alive under her tutelage. Students comment on her passion, insight, excellence, and student-centeredness, qualities that epitomize Archie's approach to teaching.
Dr. Cooper's exceptional achievements and qualities as a scholar, educator, and collaborator set her apart as a true leader and mentor that she is, the leader that others choose to follow. Isn't that like, now watch this. However, you need to know that Archie is not always all about business. Her sense of humor is infectious, and she is always a good sport. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Whether participating in a student bonspiel, lecturing a crowd at beer and skits, or dancing the tensor fascia lenta. Notice the internal rotation? Despite her accomplished career, Dr. Cooper treats students at all levels and all others, no matter what stage of their career, with equal respect. Although some are initially intimidated by Dr. Cooper, they are soon put at ease by her welcoming comments and her generosity of time, wisdom, and spirit.
Archie's knowledge and passion for her work and the respectful and authentic manner in which she interacts with others are rare and special qualities. What you see is what you get. It is our pleasure to introduce our friend and colleague, Dr. Juliette Cooper.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, mes chers collègues. Je suis très fière d'être nommée la conférencière du discours commémoratif Muriel Driver. Malheureusement, je suis anglophone. Donc, je vais donner le discours tout en anglais. Je vous prie de m'excuser pour cela. Donna and Emily. These people are brats. Absolute brats. I have no idea where they got the pictures, but I think my husband's in deep trouble. It is my profound pleasure, and I am deeply, deeply honored to be the Muriel Driver Memorial Lecturer. I knew Muriel Driver. I served on a committee with her. And let me tell you, she was a driver. We were scared to death of her. But Muriel she was an amazing woman, and I've woven her into this. So the title of my lecture is Reflections on the Professionalization of Occupational Therapy. It's time to put down the looking glass. So I have roots, deep roots in occupational therapy that Emily and Donna didn't quite get to. But my aunt was May Hamilton, who died in 1978. But May was a DIP OT from the University of Toronto in 1944 and promptly joined the Canadian Army. In later years, in the 50s, she worked at the Queen Mary Veterans Hospital in Montreal, where I got to see what she did and was fascinated by it. And then she went to Venezuela and established the first occupational therapy education program there. So she was a trailblazer. And in fact, Dr. Gustave Gingras, who is a prominent rehabilitation or physical medicine specialist, called her the grande dame of occupational therapy. So I had a lot to live up to. But Auntie May, which I will call her that, had a very clear vision of occupation. Here she was, somebody who graduated in 1944, practicing in the 50s. She really knew what it was all about. And she said, and believed this fully, that activity must have meaning to the patient. It was not client in those days, patient. Otherwise, it's just another form of exercise. If you're going to do that, defer to your colleagues in physiotherapy. Which was fair enough. So I dedicate this lecture to my Aunt May Hamilton, who was a trailblazer, la grande dame de l'ergothérapie. So as Emily and Donna told you, I graduated in 1963 from the University of Toronto, and I think I'll tell you a little bit about the occupational therapy environment of the day. The education environment, first of all, there was a program, a diploma in physical and occupational therapy. Now talk about messing with people's minds. Half a day you might be doing OT, the other half you had to switch to physio. I mean, it was very confusing. The enrollment was absolutely 100% women, but we had very high attrition during the program. We lost people after the first gross anatomy lab. I think 12 people dropped. And of a class, starting class of 102, we ended up with 80, I think 80 graduated in the end. And after the program, my goodness, there was great dispersal. We lost women to marriage, but mostly we lost the class to physiotherapy. And very few occupational therapists actually graduated. I was sure I was going to be a physiotherapist until I did my final fieldwork in physiotherapy, and it just didn't resonate. So I chose OT. Anyway, our education, it was totally based on tradition. Do it because I said so. Rote learning, memorize everything, spit it out. Doesn't matter if you don't understand it, but if you can say it, it must be good. Reasoning was the exception. In fact, if you reasoned, I remember one of my physiotherapy profs saying to me, "Shut up, Miss Hamilton, and sit down. Don't ask any more questions." Whoa. I used the library once, which was at the end of year 3. I've been making up for it ever since. There was absolutely no overt expectation of lifelong learning. The very last day of my final exam, I woke up and thought to myself, well, I'll never have to do this again. However, we had, in the occupational therapy program, we had some outstanding role models. Helen Levaconte, brilliant woman, scary woman, whose mind was at least 16 steps ahead of her mouth. I didn't learn to appreciate Helen until after I'd graduated. Thelma Cardwell, another inspiring person, and Isabel Robinson, also inspiring. And it wasn't until later years that I realized that Isabel was really a very nice lady. She scared me to death. And I almost failed weaving. Our practice environment. Well, it was medical model. It was absolutely the reductionist paradigm. If you were going to do something, you had to adapt a loom so that the person would pronate or they would supinate. The Phipps adaptation, some of you are old enough to remember that. I mean, it was really something. We depended upon prescriptions from physicians, and they were prescriptions. 20 minutes of weaving. My first job at the Toronto Rehab Center, I almost got fired because I told one of the physicians to stick to medicine and I do the OT. And it was almost entirely hospital-based. There really was very little, if anything, in the community. Full-time only. If you had childcare issues, you were out. That was it. Very high attrition. Because women got married, they had babies, they were gone. That was it. Leadership. We had very strong leadership at the international, national, and provincial levels. We had Thelma Cardwell, we had Muriel Driver. Everybody knew who they were. Very strong leaders. And my perception of occupational therapy when I graduated was that occupational therapy is a profession. It's not an occupation. However, occupational therapy is not well known or understood by the public. That was 1963. So my motivation to examine professionalization, well, I'm entering my 50th year in occupational therapy. Half a century. So, it really seemed like a good time to reflect on my experience. And I offer the reflect to my dear colleague, Teresa Sullivan, who has much to do with the fact that we all reflect now. Anyway, so my perception is that there have been some very profound changes in occupational therapy in Canada over that 50-year span. That occupational therapy is still neither well known nor understood by the public. That understanding of the term professional has changed over time and that this is very relevant to occupational therapy. And my big wish for you and for everyone as a result of my ruminations here on this stage is that understanding the process of our professionalization will provide guidance for advancing occupational therapy in Canada. So, come on, we've done that. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to define profession and see how that definition has differed over time. We're going to talk about I am going to talk about the importance of being recognized as a profession. I'm going to look at occupational therapy as a profession, going to look at the process of professionalization, provide you a definition of professionalization. We got to define everything. It's painful. Theories and models of professionalization over the years, what some of the barriers to professionalization are, some of the facilitators to professionalization. I'm going to give you a professionalization framework. And then we're going to take a look at professionalization of OT in Canada from my perspective, 1963 to 2012. And it's my perspective. So if there are errors of fact, they're my errors of fact. If there are things that annoy you about it, it's fine, I don't care. So we're going to look at major changes, we're going to look at critical events, and then I'm going to take stock of where I think occupational therapy is in 2012. You may disagree, but that's too bad. I'm going to look at areas of concern that I have, and some of the areas of optimism that I have, and then some thoughts about how we're going to move forward. I do have some folks that I do need to acknowledge, and the inevitable references, because I spent a lot of time in the library, virtually or otherwise. So some of the definitions of profession over time. Well, 1957, Greenwood, who's a social worker actually, said a profession is an organized group which is constantly interacting with the society that forms its matrix, which performs its social functions through a network of formal and informal relationships, and which creates its own subculture requiring adjustments to it as a prerequisite for success. Pavalko, a little bit later, and Pavalko was a sociologist, a profession refers to an extreme end of a continuum of work characteristics. And professions are those work activities that exhibit this complex of work characteristics to a high degree. Ooh, I like that. I really like that. Abbott, a little bit later, professions are exclusive occupational groups applying somewhat abstract knowledge to particular cases. And finally, Adams, who's a sociologist who works at Western University, not the University of Western Ontario, but Western University. Professions are organized occupational groups with a somewhat accepted claim to legal and or social status. We've done that. Okay, importance of profession. So why are we fussing about this? Like, who cares? Well, what do we associate with the term profession? Autonomy? Respect? Recognition? Status and prestige? Power? And cars, well, that's for you. Influence? So do we associate those terms with all professions or only a few? And do those terms apply to occupational therapy? Why or why not? Occupational therapy as profession. I now quote Dr. Goldwyn Howland, 1944. The battle is won, and you occupational therapists are regarded both today and for all future time in your proper sphere as members of a recognized profession. Thelma Cardwell, 1966. And we can probably all quote this in our sleep. We are too diffident a group, both individually and collectively. We are much too timid in bringing our work to the attention of others. In short, we are ineffective in selling our profession. Youngblood, 1984. Occupational therapy has moved along the scale of professionalism in the last 60 years, but has not attained status as a full-fledged profession. Sue Baptiste, 2011, Saskatoon. We need to move to the next plateau of professionalization of occupational therapy. We are not there yet. Why are we not there yet? Well, the process of professionalization, so what is it? It's a big word. It is a process whereby an activity or occupation becomes a profession, obviously. Distinguishable divergent processes which occur within institutions of learning, division of labor, the economic market, and areas of political and social power. Segrist, 1990. So that's professionalization. It is a process. It's not a destination. So some theories and models, because sociologists have been fussing about this for a long time. There's started off with the taxonomic theory. I love this one. This one engaged me from the beginning. Criteria for professional status. An occupation is a profession if it has systematic theory, a body of abstract knowledge. Cha-ching. Theory constructed through research. We've got it. Relevance to basic social values. That's us. An extensive training period and apprenticeship at university level. Motivated practitioners. You're all here. Autonomy. Yes. Practitioners who work full time. Yeah. Practitioners with a sense of commitment to the occupation. Again, you're here. A sense of community and practitioners dedicated to service. That's us. A code of ethics. We have it. A national organization. Cha-ching. A culture. Oh, yes. We have acronyms. We have ACTUP and ACATRO and, you know. Sanctioned by its community. Maybe not so much. However, that's the list. And theoretically, if you go, yep, you are a profession. Interesting. Then came along the continuum model. You'll note all of those folks were sort of 60s, 70s. Continuum model was advanced by this Pavalko. and I really liked this. This one engaged me. He said that the position of an occupation relative to each of the criteria that we just went before moves along a continuum over time. So it starts off at the occupation end, and over time, bloop, bloop, it becomes a profession. And the expectation is that overall, the movement will be from the occupation end to the profession end of the continuum. Well, that made perfect sense to me, and I foisted this model off on my physiotherapy colleagues and told them it was the truth. So this is an example here of the movement over time on this occupation-profession continuum. So if you look at the left-hand side, it says 19XX, whatever year that is, and you can see that theory, research, social values, all those different things, and you can actually plot where your profession was along that continuum, or your occupation was. And you could do it again at another point in time, like 2012, and this is purely sham data, okay? This is not representing anything, guys, not at all. Okay, and you can see, have you advanced or have you regressed? In some areas, maybe you have regressed. But there is that movement along the continuum. Then there was another way of looking at it. According to Walensky, who was 1964, after I graduated, professionalization has a defined temporal sequence. So it starts at one place and ends at another. And so from beginning to end, number one, a certain type of work for which there is a need is carried out full-time. That's where you start. Then you go on, you establish a training school. If not in a university, it soon moves to a university. Then you form a professional association, and core tasks and competencies are defined by the association. Political lobbying for legal protection of practice and job title. Formal code of ethics is established, and you're a profession. Ta-da! Now, there was a challenge to the taxonomic theories and temporal sequence model. Beginning in the late 70s, early 80s, people went, no, 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 it's not quite that easy. So Roth in 1974 challenged that list of criteria. And he refuted the rationale for each of them, stating that the background assumptions are not random, but arise from an uncritical acceptance of the ideology of established and on-the-make professions. And he brought forward the concepts of status and prestige and really said that only the public can confer the construct of professional upon an occupation. So you can't do it yourself, somebody else has to do it for you. They will tell you if you're a profession or not. Clegon, 78, a little later, agreed that lists of criteria were absolutely not useful. He cited there were inconsistency in terminology, and he suggested that granting of professional status was a class issue. And the social meaning of knowledge and tasks performed were the critical elements of professionalization. The temporal sequence model, Roth gave the boot to that too. He agreed that there is in fact a process of professionalization, but he absolutely disagreed that there's a prescribed sequence of events. Doesn't happen in that nice linear fashion. So the final one was the system of professions. And a fellow, an iconoclast, was Abbott, 1988. He rejected the whole taxonomy concept and proposed instead a system of professions. His work is absolutely riveting. I could have gone on for hours. There could be a whole course around Abbott's stuff. He said professions evolve based on interrelationships, and these interrelationships depend upon how groups control their knowledge and skill. Professions are distinguished by their abstract knowledge. Ooh, we are getting there, folks. And he said that knowledge is the currency of competition. Professions are defined by their jurisdictions. So that's sort of the link between the profession and its work, what you say you do and what you are doing. And professions develop when jurisdictions become vacant. So if you give up something, somebody else moves into it. And professions compete for jurisdiction, giving rise to interprofessional conflict. Very Darwinian. So if you can't make it, somebody else will gobble you up, and you are gone. He went on. He said, in claiming jurisdiction, a profession asks society to recognize its cognitive structure. And jurisdictional boundaries are established through negotiation, but they can be very short-lived, and they're very vulnerable to organizational change.
So we had massive organizational change in the Canadian healthcare system in 1990. We are about to have it again, so listen up. Jurisdictions are influenced by external and by internal forces, and shifts in cultural and social values strengthen or weaken jurisdictions. The criteria that define a profession are determined by society. He's agreed upon that, and therefore are subject to context, to culture, and to market demands. However, he did say that if you call yourself a profession, you are one. Okay, to say a profession exists is to make it one. I want t-shirts that say that. Now, Adams, who has done some really interesting writing on professionalization in recent times, she's supported much of Abbott's work and states that really currently there are no theoretical tools to identify professions. She said it's all smoke and mirrors. We're not there yet at all. But she also said it does not appear to be the presence of a specific set of traits that defines a profession, rather organization, status, and the structuring of social relations appears to be key. She also agreed that professional status can only be conferred by a society that values the occupational group and its work. So there we are. Are there barriers to professionalization? Oh, yes. You'll recognize this instantly. Organizations, administrative control, and bureaucracies are barriers to professionalizations because professionals can be controlled by non-professionals or by other professions, and autonomy is curbed in a lot of organizations and bureaucracies. You might think it's good for your client, you can't do that. Can't be done. It's not in the care plan. Threats to exclusive jurisdiction. This happens a lot. Think about it. Reflect on this, please, with me. Knowledge base seems or is common to other practitioners. The knowledge base is very precise. It can be learned easily by others. You know, a trained monkey could do your job. Or a knowledge base is vague and difficult to explain to the lay public. Oh, pain. The educated public can be a barrier to professionalization, and right now we know that greater knowledge about practice, increased skepticism about professional claims. You can Google anything, and you will have a public that is more skeptical than it was, say, 10 to 15 years ago. And certainly lack of knowledge about the scope of practice of a group can be a barrier. Then there are the internal influences. This is within our own profession. Lack of cooperation among groups belonging to a profession. Internecine conflict. Somebody said, what does that mean? I said, loosely translated, it means we eat our own. There's conflict between groups within the profession. Lack of resources, not enough money to get the job done. Lack of personnel, not enough volunteers to get the job done. Those are internal. And there is then the political process. Now, Bose did some very interesting work. She compared two approaches to professionalization in Canada. And I will not tell you what the professions are. You can go and look it up. There was one profession that used a very corporatist approach, and I'll show you what that means in a minute, and another that used a very pluralist approach. In the corporatist approach, these folks are fighting now for their professional status and becoming a profession. They decided that based on evidence, I mean, obviously, look at the numbers, look at the evidence, lots of research. Education, we have university, advanced degrees. Excellence of care, we give wonderful care. And professional legitimacy. Everybody agrees we're a profession. So that should make us advance in terms of our profession. However, they sat back and said, well, if we're that good, somebody else can do the fighting for us. Then there was the pluralist approach, quite different. It was based on engagement of the public and of legislators, and it was sustained, strategic political activity. Some of you are probably guessing what profession this was. Very active. And the profession that used the pluralist approach was far more successful in achieving perceived professional status than was the profession that adopted the corporatist approach. And the factors that contributed to that more successful approach, according to Bose, were political activism, astute use of political resources, willingness to cooperate within the profession. They presented a united dynamic front, they represented a popular cause, and they had a very strong financial position. And they got ahead, and the others did not. So in summary, professionalization is relative to a particular society. It's relative to a particular historical period. It's a highly complex process. It's subject to all kinds of influences, economic, organizational, political, cultural, social. It's dynamic, it's a continuous process, and sous Baptiste, we never ever get there because we have to keep at it all the time. It's a continuous process. So I'm going to offer you a framework where you can look at professionalization. Now, you may find this helpful, or you may go, this is just goofy. But I'm offering it from my perspective of 50 years out. There are constraints on occupational autonomy, and those constraints are consumerism, bureaucracy, market forces, and trade unionism. There is an internal dynamic that has to be taken into account. And that internal dynamic can really drive things. It's the drive to raise status, definition of scope of practice, regulation of entry, control of educational requirements, definition of levels of competence, protection of knowledge base, increased autonomy and influence in pursuit of new jurisdictions. Boy, that sounds like occupational therapy. That's pretty good. Then there's the external dynamic. This is the big bad world outside of our realm. And what sits there? Power relations with society, social meaning, control of knowledge, significance of tasks to society, changes in technology and organizations, competitions for jurisdictions, changes in management principles, research evidence, work setting, the economic context, the social context, the political context. All of those figure into this whole business of professionalization. So my reflection, so how do these theories of professionalization relate to occupational therapy in Canada? Do they help us understand why we're not there yet? What are some of the changes that have occurred in my 50 years in the profession? What were their critical events related to professionalization? Well, I think there have been major changes in the last 50 years. First off, in education, we've gone from diploma, the POTS, to diploma, from diploma to baccalaureate to master's for entry into the profession in 50 years. That's huge. For the faculty, for university educators, we've gone from baccalaureate to master's to doctorate. In our arenas of practice, there has been profound change. We've gone from acute care and mental hospitals to community agencies, outreach programs, schools, the justice system, housing, transportation, industry. We are spread in many different areas. We've gone from only full-time employment to all kinds of flex-time employment possibilities. In terms of autonomy, we've gone from a prescription by a physician, 20 minutes of waiting, to direct access in 2012. I need OT services, I'll phone up an OT and get them. Regulation and standards. Well, there was no provincial regulation whatsoever when I graduated, now to regulatory acts in all provinces. We have a national certification examination. We have developed and implemented an accreditation process for our educational programs. We came up with the profile of occupational therapy practice in Canada and the essential competencies of practice for occupational therapists in Canada. All good stuff. In terms of representation, well, CAOT moved from Toronto to Ottawa. Brilliant move. And I remember at the time thinking, boy, is that dumb. Why would they do that? Whoever engineered that, that was absolutely brilliant. The board of directors of CAOT is now representative of the country. It certainly wasn't that. When I graduated in 1963, everybody lived in Toronto. And CAOT has a growing number of advocacy programs. And if I could, really raise a flag and cheer for CAOT right now, I would, in fact, I will do that. CAOT, yeah. CAOT advocates on our behalf in fairly subtle ways, but let me tell you, they are very effective. CAOT has, I think, a really good sense of how to do the political dance, and the rest of us are going to have to learn to catch up. So bravo, CAOT, all of you, amazing. Okay, so more major changes, academic resources. You're going to love this one. There were less than 10 textbooks specific to OT in 1963. I counted 501 titles in the University of Manitoba libraries. This is just textbooks in 2012. That was fun. Theory and models. Oh, please. We didn't have, there was no theory in 1963. We had no models per se. I mean, we did, but we didn't talk about them. Now there's a wealth of information about theories and models. A wealth, we groan under them. In 1975 to 79, I did a library search. There was an average of 1.8 papers in Scopus to now 139.2 in 2005, 2009. And I searched OT and models in theory. It's just like, we have developed our own Canadian models, the Canadian model of occupational performance, the person-environment occupation model, the CAOT model, and now more recently, the CMOP-E. These are our own internal Canadian models. Not everybody likes them, not everybody agrees with them. Some are going, please, not another model, but hey, we have our own models. We do not need those of another country. Evidence-based practice, evidence-informed practice, research, oh my goodness me. What has changed? We've gone from acceptance of tradition, oh my goodness, if Helen Leviconte says it, it must be so, to questioning of practice. Archie, I don't believe that. I love it when my students challenge me. From a completely reductionistic paradigm now to a holistic paradigm. We used to be consumers of evidence, we are now generators of evidence. And we have established the Canadian Occupational Therapy Foundation to support occupational therapy research. And I'm shamelessly promoting this. Our researchers have had amazing success at national and provincial granting agencies, CIHR, SSHRC, and here in Quebec, the FRSQ, I think it's changed its name, but OTs have done very, very well, and I have to applaud Quebec. The province has done an amazing job of facilitating research for those of us in the healing professions. Client-centeredness, occupation, and enablement. Well, we've gone from doing to the patient to collaborating with the client. We've gone from activities to occupation writ large. And we've gone from a focus on disability to the process of enablement. All powerful, wonderful things that have happened. However, there have been some critical events. For me, and remember, this is my stuff, okay? It's my stuff. The Maxwell Report in 1977. Hands up all of those of you who remember the Maxwell Report. Okay? Yeah, it's less than a fifth of this room. The Maxwell Report was entitled Occupational Therapy, the Diffident Profession. And when I saw that title, I was enraged. How dare they call us the diffident profession? Then I went and found out, what does diffident mean? This report was the results of a national survey of occupational therapists, and it was commissioned by CAOT, and authored by two sociologists from Queen's University, Jim and Mary Maxwell, lovely folks, who really did set the cat among the pigeons. They took a social change perspective. They knew that they were going to change occupational therapy in the direction of the profession. Their findings were interesting. They found that therapists, they did a survey of all occupational therapists across Canada and found that OTs were very dissatisfied with the recognition of the value of occupational therapy. They were dissatisfied with their own knowledge of research, of policy formulation and administration. They felt a great need for support personnel. They recognized gender imbalance in occupational therapy in Canada. And Jim and Mary Maxwell also said there's really a lack of clear relationships between CAOT and the provincial associations, and it's completely inadequate the way it is now for dealing with complex federal-provincial relationships in healthcare. So they made some recommendations. First off, they said that CAOT and the provincial associations encourage their members to take a more active and more visible interest in healthcare planning and administration at all levels. That there be some level of postgraduate specialization with reallocation of some tasks to support personnel. And that specialization be used as a means to improve quality of service delivery, enhance leadership skills, and increase knowledge of healthcare policy. That occupational therapy specific master's degree programs be established. There were none at that time. And that occupational therapists be assisted to complete doctoral education, quotes, in related disciplines that would complement their previous training. So get out and do it. That there be a pilot program to train support personnel, and that the admission criteria for that program should be lower than those for OT programs. Makes sense. That men and women should have equal access to professional training, and that women in the profession be sensitized to the way in which sex role and professional socialization affect their personal styles and strategies. And they got away with it. And that occupational therapists develop greater political sophistication in both their external and internal environments. The second critical event for me was the Mohawk program. In 1970, there was a report of the Ontario Committee on the Healing Arts that recommended that at least one pilot project for educating occupational therapists in a program offered in an appropriate college of applied arts and technology be undertaken, and that immediate studies be made by the Department of Health and the Council of Health on the role of occupational therapists trained in such programs and their contribution to the health system. So in other words, take occupational therapy out of the university and put it into a community college. So OT had always been a university program right from the very beginning, and this was perceived as a major, major setback. So there was very vigorous efforts by OSOT and CAOT, and in spite of that, a diploma program was mounted at Mohawk College in Hamilton in 1975. I would also like to say that this was an incredibly divisive issue for the profession, because there were some folks who felt this was a really good move, and a lot of folks felt this was not a very good move, and it was a very, very difficult time for the profession. So according to Maxwell, but Jim and Mary reflected on this, and they said that the Ontario proposal represented a symbolic assault on a profession that was small numerically and only beginning to establish its own culture of leadership. The leadership of the occupation came to see itself as a group of naive women in a male-dominated world and began to consider ways of developing more effective strategies and abilities. In many ways, the struggle was a maturing experience. Another critical event was client-centered practice. And the publication of the guidelines for the client-centered practice of occupational therapy in 1983 was, to me, a very profound event. And I quote, "The occupational therapy process is based not only on the personal experience of the client, but also on his social reality." This was a very far-seeing document of its time. The next was the Canadian model of occupational performance. Its first iteration of what was to become the Canadian model of occupational performance came out in the 1983 guidelines. And revisions to that original model were informed by consultations at conferences, and there was the guidelines impact study that Blaine and Townsend reported on in 1993. So all of that was put into a book called Enabling Occupation, an Occupational Therapy Perspective in 1997, and I remember getting my copy signed by Elizabeth Townsend and Helen Politaco. It was a big event. So that was wonderful. We also now have a consensus about occupation. We've stopped fussing about it. Occupation is and always has been a defining term for our profession. It's meant to identify who we are and what we do, and to convey that meaning to our clients, our colleagues, and the public. Helen Politaco and colleagues, 2004. So occupation is an activity or set of activities that is performed with some consistency and regularity that brings structure and is given value and meaning by individuals and a culture. That's a very profound statement. And that's occupation writ large. And there we are. We come back to the original sort of little logo that we had, per mentem et manus et sanitatem. I used to have a very spiffy belt for my green uniform that had a copper buckle that said just that, by mind and hands to health. Lovely. So, taking stock, occupational therapy in 2012. Well, let's look at our framework. What are our constraints on occupational therapy autonomy? Policymakers, unions, consumerism, regulatory bodies, management structures, and market forces. All of those will constrain our profession to some degree, our autonomy. Take a look at this. Our internal dynamic, if you look at the size of that frame compared to the external dynamic, this is how I see it. Our internal dynamic, we have a lot of introspection. We have competition. We have scope of practice issues. We have fragmentation. Lifelong learning is difficult for some. Advocacy is a tough thing to get around. Difficulty with retention of practitioners. Our status, maybe we don't perceive ourselves as having much. Inclusivity is still an issue. And we have a multitude of professional organizations. We have credential change. We have a client focus. We have research findings. We have theories and models. All of those inform our internal dynamic. Then we have outcomes. We have support personnel, evidence-informed practice, specialization, salary, distribution of practitioners, very uneven. In fact, we don't have a good handle on our distribution of practitioners. Knowledge translation. All of those affect our internal dynamic. External dynamic. Oh, my goodness. Economic evidence for occupational therapy effectiveness. Leadership. We all fuss about it. Where are all our leaders? Where are our volunteers? Prestige, public understanding, jurisdictional challenges. We are now looking at complex populations. We've got social media. We've got branding. We've got primary health care. We have interprofessional practice. And we have chronic illness, technology, changing demographic, return on investment, the mantra of the current federal government, funding, the economy, traditional media, globalization, community, culture, employers, legislation, third-party payers. How can we keep up? So I have some areas of concern with respect to our internal dynamic. They're the ones that I had in red. Introspection. So instead of concentrating on abstract traits of a position, of an occupation, it's necessary to recognize that resources contributing to successful professionalization stem from linkages to a wider social structure. And professions tend to withdraw into themselves, away from the task for which they claim public jurisdiction. And this pattern results from internal status rankings. So the pecking order internal to the profession. In our present period of professional life, we, in our various meetings and encounters, seem to be gazing at ourselves introspectively. Concern is repeatedly expressed for the possession or acquisition of status. Muriel Driver, 1967. And that's around the time that I was involved with her. I think we have a very sustained internal dialogue. We're way too focused on convincing ourselves of who we are and why we are important. We go round and round and round. We are wonderful. Right? So, yeah. Advocacy. As professions seek to survive and even prosper, they construct a reality about themselves which they hope will be accepted by their environments. The environments, in turn, do their own constructing. Survival involves the development of an economic and political niche in the social system, and once that niche is secure, the profession will persist. According to Maxwell, 1977, OT is not a field where new findings are likely to lead to public recognition and public funds on a silver platter. It shares the neglect we often offer the handicapped and the chronically ill. you are not likely to be dragged into the arenas of power and to be asked to organize and direct the healthcare system. Whether it is at the local level, the regional level, or the provincial or national level, it is important for OTs to know and be familiar with the avenues of power. No group will achieve political success unless it can sustain the support of its members, employees, and friends. A group must attract enough members from its potential clientele to sustain its work and to ensure that it represents adequately its community. This is Paul Pross. He's a Canadian, and he too has written some very provocative things about the professions. So our perception of status is an area of concern for me. According to Nancarrow and Borthwick, a profession is a special status in the division of labor that is supported by an official and sometimes public belief that it is worthy of that status. Two different types of status have traditionally been crucial for professions: social status and legal status. Professions are ultimately status groups, and if one examines which occupations have status in certain locations and at certain points in time, one should be able to identify professions. So you think profession, what do you think? Doctors, lawyers, right? Do you think about OTs right off the top? Probably not. Retention of practitioners. Okay, this is interesting. This is the percentage of CAOT members in two age categories over time. The green bars represent those who are 45 to 54 years old. The yellow bars are the ones that are from 55 to 64 years old. Take a look at those bars. Is there something weird here? Why is there this big drop-off? Is everybody retiring at 55? I don't think so, but they're gone. They're not in the profession. What is going on? We're not retaining those folks. Why are we losing them? Are they leaving for other positions, or are they retiring, or why? These folks represent institutional memory, the institutional memory of occupational therapy, and we are losing a very important resource if, in fact, we are losing those folks to something else. Profession is more likely to be a terminal occupation. Members do not care to leave it, but they are, for whatever reason. Here's another issue for retention of practitioners. This is changes in hourly salary rates of occupational therapists from 1999 to 2011. And again, I would like to commend CAOT for its excellent statistics, which I mined shamelessly. So if you look at the green trace there, those are the folks who are earning about $31 to $35 an hour. The purple trace are those who are earning $36 to $40 an hour. And you can see that from 1999, 2000 to about 2004, 2005, there was an upward trajectory, but things have really leveled off. Now we know that things are tough in the economy, but salary is an issue for occupational therapists. Salary is an issue for attracting people to the profession, and we are flatlining. This is not good. So they reached a plateau in 2008-9 and have gone nowhere since. So who advocates for occupational therapists in the workplace? We used to have department heads. I had Joy Houston Bassett for a while as my department head. She was wonderful. She advocated for me. We don't have those folks anymore. And that has implications for retention of practitioners. Our managers are more likely to be nurses than they are occupational therapists. Here's another issue for me, our professional organizations. Now, you can see the different bars are the different years, and I've taken the data from the Canadian Institutes for Health Information and from CAOT and plotted them both. Now, the CAI data represent everybody who's registered, so we know it's not quite everybody, and the CAOT data represents everybody who's a member of CAOT. There is one province missing, and that's the province of Quebec. And I apologize for that, but the data are very anomalous. They really cannot be compared to those of the rest of the country. But take a look at it. The far left is Newfoundland, and on the far right, we've got the territories. And you can see over time, there have been some fluctuations. So that bar there represents 100%. So if we had 100% membership, that's what it would look like. The average for CAOT is we are averaging about 61% of registered occupational therapists are also members of CAOT. However, you need to look at some of the provinces. Ontario, for instance, there's a downward trend. Alberta, there's a downward trend. BC, there is a downward trend. We do know that some provinces require you to be a member of CAOT in order to be registered, but not everybody does because the legislation is different in each province. So other than fees, are there barriers to membership in OT professional organizations? You know, I do have to be registered with my regulatory body, but, well, maybe I should be involved with a professional and national organization or my professional organization. That's discretionary. You don't have to. Why is there a decline in CAOT membership in some provinces and not others? Does legislation account for the stable membership in some provinces? Look at Saskatchewan. I mean, they are the paragon of virtue, right? But you have to, in order to be registered in Saskatchewan, you have to belong to your Saskatchewan society, and to CAOT. So that accounts for that. But it's interesting data. I'm not pointing my finger and saying bad anybody. Although I did look at Manitoba and go, could be better. Anyway, I think we need to think about that. We need to support our professional organizations. Membership affects resources and the work that CAOT can do for the profession. So, if somebody says to me, well, what CAOT ever done for me? Go, are you a member? No, I don't want to hear it. If you are a member, we can have a dialogue, and I'll tell you what CAOT does for you. Maybe you ought to put me on retainer. Another area of concern for me is the inability to work to full scope of practice. So healthcare disciplines are not free to change their boundaries or scope of practice at will. Health practitioner boundaries are influenced by the dominance of other disciplines, regulatory and legislative frameworks, and the ability of the profession to convince funders and public to purchase their services. So within work in occupational therapy as an expert in enabling occupation is considered the central role, expertise, and competence of an occupational therapist. Wow. Knowledge and skills used to enable occupation are incredibly complex, and they're very wide-ranging. But the scope of practice is defined by provincial regulatory bodies. And in some settings, such as acute care, the role of the OT can be defined very narrowly. So the inability to work to full scope of practice may lead to attrition. People can get bored, get frustrated by their inability to practice their full scope. We were once known as the ladies with the pink bunnies. Are we now known as the people with the grab bars and the raised toilet seats? That's narrow scope of practice. So fragmentation and barriers to lifelong learning. Fragmentation as professions evolve or emerge as a division of labor, the theory-oriented person and the practice-oriented person. And there is a tension between the practitioners and the academics. There's this push and pull between the, quotes, real world and the ivory tower. We like to say, no, there's no gap. There is. We live in two separate social kind of worlds, and we need to recognize that and get over ourselves. Fragmentation diminishes our effectiveness. And we're integral parts of the whole. We need to work in partnership, recognizing and capitalizing on our strengths. Clinicians have excellent clinical questions. I hope that I can partner with them with some of my research skills to create something bigger than the two of us together. Our barriers to lifelong learning, practitioners have little time to assimilate new information. There used to be workplace support to attend courses and conferences. That's very rare, if at all. Access to libraries can be very limited for some practitioners. And oftentimes people need to, the funder will say, show me a return on investment on continuing professional education. Oh my goodness, how can there not be a return on investment? But it's difficult to do those things. So another one for me is the internal dynamic of inclusivity. There we go, 1999 to 2011, there's been no movement in our proportion of males in occupational therapy. So our membership does not reflect the gender distribution of the population of Canada, which is almost 40, well, almost 50-50, right? Stats Can 2012, I'm not making it up. And our gender imbalance was noted by Maxwell and Maxwell in 1977. It continues unabated. So why are there so few men? I have a colleague and student who is working on that one right now. Public understanding is another area. How many of you have heard of the American League of Functional Therapists, acronym ALOFT? Google it. ALOFT is an organization in the United States, and it seeks to register all OTs and all OT assistants to use the titles Registered Functional Therapist or Registered Functional Therapy Associate. Why? Our mission is to help OT expand and be more understandable to the public as functional therapy. There's the hyperlink. I am not making it up. Ultimately, occupational therapy is in the battle for the public mind. Stephen Lewis, Saskatoon, 2011. We need to engage the public about the concept of occupation. We really do. And as a profession, we need to be aware of the impact of the economic and social changes in society and how those affect occupation. I think we do that really well. We just have a hard time communicating. So there are my neurons. I had to have some anatomy in here at some point. Economic evidence. Oh dear, this is a biggie for me. Demonstrations of the way in which OT services save money over the long run and in the short run as well would substitute hard evidence for what has often been simple faith. It is not enough to convince yourselves that you are an economic alternative. You must convince others, those in your departments, in your hospitals, in your regions, in your province. You must convince your aides, your technicians, your staff, in some cases, your fellow OTs. We tend to want to do it all ourselves rather than seek partners who will help get us there. And I think we can collaborate with health economists to design studies that will demonstrate the economic impact of occupational therapy services. We have jurisdictional challenges. Competition for jurisdictions. This is that whole Darwinian thing. We now have recreation therapists, we have physiotherapists, we have kinesiologists, nurses, psychologists who provide functional activity who all say they do what we do. No occupation becomes a profession without a struggle, and no specialty develops inside a profession without antagonism. Leadership. This is the percentage of CAOT members who report an administrator role. That could be an administrator, a manager, professional leader, or coordinator. Ooh, it was above between 16 and 18% right up until 2005 and 6, and suddenly, boom, it's down. It's at 10%, hovering around 10%. There's a big drop-off. Change in organizational structure absolutely has impacted leadership opportunities, no question. But what accounts for the decrease in numbers in our leadership positions? And OTs, as leaders, are important advocates for the profession, so the visibility of the profession is diminished. And prestige. What is prestige? Well, it's influence or reputation derived from achievements, associations, or character from past success, or a person's standing in the estimation of others. This is all really boring stuff. Except Isaacson in '77 said it's the esteem or social status accorded to an occupation by the general population. So that's how you get status and prestige. Somebody else says you have status and prestige. You can't make it. It's conferred upon you. So without knowledge, the public and other health professions are unlikely to make any judgment about the role of occupational therapist, and prestige and recognition ratings are unlikely to change. So here it was. There was a guy called Bernard Blishen who used to do this Blishen scale and rated everybody in terms of their occupational prestige. And this is really garbage data, I have to tell you, because not everybody looks at it in the same way. But it's just interesting that Blishen in '71, he showed that dentists were ranked #1 and occupational therapists were ranked #9 out of 10 professions. OTs in 1976 in the Maxwell survey rated themselves at 8 out of 10 on this Blishen scale. Blishen and McRoberts repeated the scale. They did this every year for a long time, 1976, and we were at 8.5. And then more recently, Monica Boyd at the University of Toronto in 2005, not quite comparable because she was really looking at socioeconomic status, but said OT is at 5 out of that comparable 10. And the social worker by then had fallen from grace from being number 4 to number 10. But dentists were always number 1. So there's the occupational therapist. But prestige ratings can change, obviously. There are all kinds of things that impact on that change. So we absolutely can move. And where do we see ourselves in 2012? I don't know, but I'm going to propose an independent study for my students to redo the Blishen scale. I think it's great. So some areas of optimism. Now, all of that was such a downer, right? Oh, all these things that are wrong. Now, what are we doing right in terms of our internal dynamic? Our branding. Occupation is our brand. We need to celebrate it. We have theories and models of practice that are the envy of occupational therapists in other parts of the world. We have a client focus. We have expanding arenas of practice. We've gone from acute care to working with the homeless. We work with folks who have HIV. We are now moving into primary health care and primary care. It's very exciting. We have terrific education programs and curricula, and I'm not paid to say that. They are. We have wonderful programs. And we have growing and very awesome research expertise. In the external dynamic, we've got these populations with incredibly complex issues. There's no easy fix for these folks. Seniors, yes. Veterans coming back from Afghanistan, people with chronic disease, people who are homeless, where one kind of intervention won't do. There is no pill that's going to fix this. It's their life, their occupations that give them meaning. Primary health care is a tremendous opportunity for linking with other systems, housing and justice and so forth. Very important. Interprofessional education and practice, a tremendous area of opportunity. Use of social media, CAOT, you are great. I get my Twitter feed. And we're on Facebook, and so COTF, it's wonderful. Are developing political skills. And that's where I think CAOT is showing tremendous vision. And the advocacy activities of CAOT, which I've already mentioned, but bear mentioning again, because they really are awesome. So moving forward, how do we move from here, where our internal dynamic is huge and our external dynamic is small, which is where I think we are now, to still a fairly large internal dynamic, but let's make the external dynamic bigger. So if professional status can only be conferred by a society that values the occupational group and its work, then development and maintenance of our professional status is dependent on increasing our visibility and educating the public about the concept of occupation. To do this, we will need internal resolve to be united and to look outward. No more models, no more ruminating over theory, no more navel gazing, look outward. We will need resources. We need everybody to be members of CAOT. We will need strategy and tactics, and the Archie Cooper version of dealing with politicians, which was be in your face and tell you what you're doing wrong, doesn't work. As one of the things that CAOT did for me was to get me appointed to the Board of Research Canada, an advocacy group for health research in Ottawa. And I have learned so much about how to be strategic and how to play the political game. It's amazing. I know a lot more. Believe me, I don't know it all. But Brenda McKimmon-Lammy she's a god. We will follow her. We need exemplars. We need evidence of the economic value of occupational therapy to the Canadian public. Oh, please, somebody, please, let's hook up with health economists and get some figures to attach to this, because that's what will sell in Ottawa. It's the only thing that's going to sell in Ottawa. Forget quality of life. They don't care. Money drives everything. Now, when I say forget quality of life, I don't really mean that. So we have to work together to improve the visibility and recognition of occupational therapy. And instead of concentrating on abstract traits of a profession, it's necessary to recognize that resources contributing to successful professionalization stem from linkages to the wider social structure. So it's now time to put down that looking glass. We've got to stop looking at ourselves and look instead to the horizon. And that, my friends, is Manitoba. You are not quite done with me. I'm not quite done. I do have to acknowledge. I know you thought I was. But I really have to thank my nominators, my colleague, my boss, my friend, Dr. Emily Echeverry, my other boss, Donna Collins, who is the best boss in the world, Margaret Ann Campbell-Rempel, Leslie Johnson, Leanne Leclerc, Jackie Rapat, and Pam Wenner. To all my colleagues in the School of Medical Rehabilitation at the University of Manitoba. They are amazing folks, and I'm so privileged. I'm so privileged, in fact, that even though I retired 6 years ago, I still hang out with them every day. Natalie McLeod-Schroeder, for her ongoing spirited discussions of professionalization. Oh, my goodness me. All of my students, past and present, raise your hand if I ever taught you. Thank you. The occupational therapy community in Manitoba, again, a wonderful group of folks. My colleagues in the wider community at the University of Manitoba, it's given me so many opportunities, and I'd like to acknowledge my other boss who's here, Jeff Leclerc, who is the Secretary of the University of Manitoba. He's the Secretary of Senate, and he's the Secretary of the Board of Governors, and he's my adopted son. I'd also like to thank the Manitoba Physiotherapy Association and the College of Physiotherapists in Manitoba, who started me thinking about professionalization, and I foisted Pavalco off on them 3 or 4 years ago and told them it was the truth. My wonderful daughters, Pilar Bryson and Liz Cooper, and finally, I could not do anything whatsoever without my constant support, inspiration, my husband, my best friend. He's everything, Dr. John Cooper. Thank you.
Always an inadequate place to be to give thanks after something like that. Archie, you're a gem. You're also probably giving us all the shivers down there, because for this whole week, these ideas have been coming forward. From the beginning at the cabaret with Daniel, for the meetings we've experienced from Monday, never mind Wednesday, until now. These constructs have been coming out all the time. And synchronicity always makes me feel very concerned about what is around me. But you have managed to put into lovely, clear, funny, moving, and thoughtful ways everything we're thinking about right now. So God bless you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I am supposed to give you a whole pile of things. Is this one of them, I hope? No. Okay. This is these. It's almost like Christmas. It's very weird. Anyway, this is the first thing, which is always nice to have an envelope given to you with nothing written on the outside. This is the book of Muriel that is added to every year, which has a record of everybody who has given that address over time, and also what they said and what legacy they have left. And lovely roses that smell amazing.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
There you go.
Oh, they do indeed.
Lovely indeed.
Lovely.
Yes.
Thank you. Sue, can you fold up my folder here?
What do?
Oh, hold that.
Yeah. Okay.
Choreography is everything.
Okay. You're choreographing. What are you doing now? You
I'm
don't
just
have to
getting my
tidy
spot.
up right now, you know. You can get it later. Your name is engraved already on the plaque behind me. And I will draw everyone's attention to that so when they have a moment they can come and see. So, a time indeed to have been here in Quebec City for many reasons, and this is a big one of them.
Yeah.
God bless.
Thank you. Merci.
Bye, dear. Can you manage?
Thanks, Andrew.
Woo! Well, everyone take a deep breath, and we move on with some good memories of the last hour and a bit. I'd like to begin the awards ceremony component of the afternoon by acknowledging the very hard work of the awards committee. Cheryl Johnson is the chair, Paulette Guittard, René Bélanger, and Laurie Sear. So I think we should give them our full congratulations. I would also like to give very special thanks to CAOT fellow Juliette Picard, who was involved in the selection process for the Muriel Driver Lectureship Award. The decisions made by this committee are not easy ones, especially as our profession gets sophisticated, it gains talented people with bright ideas and exceptional abilities to write and to produce meaningful data. It becomes more and more difficult to select between one and another. So I thank you for your efforts in that regard. Would you please stand and be recognized so everyone knows who you are? I don't think everybody does. You get? Laurie? Okay. I will ask Cheryl Johnson, as chair of the awards committee, to assist me with the distribution of the awards. The certificates of appreciation. Volunteers are vital to our association. CAOT acknowledges the contributions of hardworking professionals and benefactors through certificates of appreciation. Volunteers sit as members of the board of directors, as a chair or a member of a committee. They represent the association on national coalitions and task forces, and they contribute to the development of CAOT products and services, such as our journal, practice magazine, and website. The diversity and success of CAOT as a professional association rests largely on the work of this great number of active volunteers. They enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, with a finer spirit of hope and achievement. And volunteers are here to enrich the world. The ultimate quote, "The ultimate expression of generosity is not in giving what you have, but in giving of who you are." This year's Certificate of Appreciation recipients are listed in the awards program handout on the left side inside the brochure. Personalized certificates will be mailed to each recipient. I ask any recipient of a CAOT Certificate of Appreciation who is in the audience to stand and be recognized. thank you for your dedication and efforts on behalf of our association, and without your assistance, we could not meet the needs of our members. Now, citation awards. They acknowledge an agency, program, and/or individual within Canada who or that has contributed to the health and well-being of Canadians, but who is not an occupational therapist. The program and/or individual has worked closely with occupational therapists and has made a significant contribution to the profession. The awards are usually presented to recipients in October during National Occupational Therapy Month, and therefore will not be here today. The Manitoba Association of Occupational Therapists and CAOT wish to present 2 citation awards this year. The first is to Mary Cox-Miller. Ms. Cox-Miller strongly values and embraces the work and philosophy of occupational therapists. She is passionate in her advocacy for the development of services for individuals and families impacted by prenatal alcohol exposure and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Congratulations. The second is to Vicky O'Lattenden. Ms. O'Lattenden is the manager of the Soul Serre Health Center at Siloam Mission, a non-profit homeless shelter that serves the population of Winnipeg's inner city. This health center provides holistic health care to individuals who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. Congratulations. We will applaud at the end. The Society of Alberta Occupational Therapists and CAOT present an award of citation to 2 people this year, or to 2 organizations. The first is Prosper Place Clubhouse. The Clubhouse Society of Edmonton and area has been actively advocating for people living with mental illness for close to 15 years. The Clubhouse provides a safe environment where adults with mental illness can enhance their quality of life. The second is to the Canadian Pain Coalition. This coalition is the voice of people with pain in Canada. The coalition serves to advocate and educate in a range of strategic fashions to effect real change for people who live with enduring pain. The Saskatchewan Society of Occupational Therapists and CAOT wish to present an award of citation to Hope Cancer Help Centre. This Help Center is a small grassroots organization founded 25 years ago by 3 cancer survivors. The organization is based in Saskatoon and helps people across the province. The Ontario Society of Occupational Therapists and CAOT wish to present awards of citation to 2 groups. The first, the Association of Family Health Teams of Ontario. The Association of Family Health Teams of Ontario is a not-for-profit association that represents family health teams in Ontario, working to support the implementation and growth of teams by promoting best practices, sharing lessons learned, and advocating on behalf of all family health teams. The second goes to the Great West Life Centre for Mental Health. This Centre for Mental Health is a unique website dedicated to helping all Canadian employers who wish to address mental health issues in the workplace. Occupational therapists recognize this to be a valuable resource to employers and individual workers who are dealing with mental health issues in the workplace. The New Brunswick Association of Occupational Therapists and CAOT wish to present an award of citation to le Service des installations matérielles de l'Hôpital régional Chaleur de Bathurst. Le personnel de ce service va régulièrement au-delà de leur description de tâches lorsque vient le temps d'aider nos clients. Félicitations au service des installations matérielles de l'hôpital régional Chaleur de Bathurst et félicitations. The Nova Scotia Society of Occupational Therapists and CAOT wish to present awards to 2 individuals. The first is to Dr. Abdul Razako Attia. Dr. Attia's working relationship with occupational therapists has influenced hand therapy intervention and improved the functional outcomes and quality of life of the clients they serve. The second is Clary Stubbett. Mr. Stubbett is employed with Home Safe Living. he uniquely understands how to enhance the lives of others through his specialization in medical and rehabilitation products with the main goal of keeping people in their homes. The Newfoundland and Labrador Association of Occupational Therapists and CAOT present an award of citation to Partners for Workplace Inclusion. Partners for Workplace Inclusion assists clients with mental illness or other disabilities to achieve successful employment. The program enhances the employability skills of persons with disabilities by providing them with tools to prepare for a career or secure employment. I would like you to applaud the efforts of all of these individuals. You can see how hard this awards committee works, my goodness. Anyway, annually, CAOT provides a student award to a graduating student at each Canadian university who has obtained the highest academic standing in coursework throughout the entire Entry to Practice occupational therapy program. If you are present, I ask that you please stand when I call your name and remain standing until all students have been announced. The 2012 winners of student awards are Brianne Copeland, Dalhousie University, Isabelle Dano, University of Ottawa, Gillian Ronson, University of Manitoba, Perrin Dunn, University of Western Ontario, Laura Sullivan, Queen's University, Tara Embry, McMaster University, Christine Fung, University of Toronto, Brianne Beecher, University of Alberta, Mireille Desrosiers, Université Laval, Maxime Glandon, Université de Sherbrooke, Geneviève Rochon, Université de Montréal, Megan Sarah Rivers, McGill University, and Christine Sparling from McGill University. Congratulations to all these students. The CAOT Award of Merit is given to acknowledge significant contributions to the profession of occupational therapy by occupational therapists and non-occupational therapists. This year, I am pleased to announce 3 recipients. The first are the Canadian Physiotherapy Association and the Canadian Association of Speech-Language Pathologists and Audiologists. The Canadian Physiotherapy Association and the Association of Speech-Language Pathologists and Audiologists have demonstrated vision, leadership, and commitment in working with CAOT for the Interprofessional Caseload Management Project. This project has led to the creation of an evidence-based tool that can assist individual professionals, organizations, and policymakers in determining effective caseload and workload management for occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and speech-language pathology services in Canada. The second group of cluster group of an award of merit are members of the CAOT-BC transition team. This includes Les Smith, Catherine Backman, Mary Wallace-Poole, and Mary Glasgow-Brown. I would like to just say a personal statement before I read what is written. These people took a courageous and brave step about a year and a half ago to face what was inevitable, and knowing they had to find a new structure for an organization to represent occupational therapy on the ground in British Columbia. Although it was a great deal of stress and sadness for them, they did not buckle and they remained involved until the job was done. They are nominated as a result of their vision and leadership as members of the transition planning team to create the British Columbia chapter of the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists, CAOT-BC. Faced with the closure of the British Columbia Society of Occupational Therapists, BCSOT, in 2011 because of declining membership enrollment, Members of the transition planning team worked with representatives of the CAOT Board of Directors to develop a new model of professional representation of occupational therapy in British Columbia. The innovative new model in British Columbia promotes collaboration and reduces duplication of services to proactively and effectively address complementary factors influencing the profession at the local, provincial, and national level. Someone here to pick it up? The final recipient of Award of Merit is Isabelle Matt. Isabelle was nominated for an Award of Merit because of her long-standing commitment to the CAOT Certification Examination Committee. In her role as chair, Isabelle led the Certification Examination Committee through several significant milestones, including the revision of the exam blueprint, an external review of the national exam, the transfer of responsibility for exam administration to a new provider, a review of all exam bank items for level of difficulty to develop a process of determining a pass score for the exam, and the early phases of the development of a trial online exam. Isabelle has also been involved with the committee to monitor translation of the CAOT national exam and related documents into French. This work involved not only reviewing all French material for accuracy and consistency with the English version, but also correcting and rewriting as required, as well as proofing all final documents before release. Congratulations, Isabelle. Now, the Golden Quill Award. This acknowledges an individual author or a group of authors that have published an exceptional article in the Canadian Journal of Occupational Therapy in the previous volume year. Eleanor Ray, or Ellie Ray, and Patricia Mortensen represent the successful recipients this year for their manuscript entitled Cultural Competence in Occupational Therapists Working in Early Intervention Therapy Programs. Are either of them here? You will you?
At a CAOT conference, so I think it's only fair.
Don't you love it? I mean, that's what it's all about, you know. Check with me as you leave on Saturday. Let me know if anything's happened this week. I'm now pleased to present the Life Membership Award. This award was established to honor those who have actively practiced occupational therapy and have been an individual member of CAOT for over 20 years. All recipients demonstrate consistent and outstanding contributions to the profession of occupational therapy in many ways. This year's winner of the Life Membership Award goes to Anne Carswell. Now, I've got to say something about her first. Will you just chill for a second, okay? Some of Anne's strongest gifts and contributions lie in leadership and administration. From 1970 to 75, she was a member of the CAOT Board of Directors and later served on the CAOT Task Force on University Accreditation, chaired the Legislative Committee, and chaired the Academic Standards and Accreditation Committee. From 1998 to 2006, Anne was again a member of the CAOT Board of Directors as Canadian delegate to the World Federation of Occupational Therapists. Anne served as secretary for the Canadian Occupational Therapy Foundation, in addition to acting as a member of the Board of Governors. She was secretary to both CAOT and ACOTUP, and was president of the Ontario Society of Occupational Therapists. She is currently executive director of the Nova Scotia Society of Occupational Therapists. From 2000 to 2006, Anne served as the Education and Research Programs Coordinator for the World Federation of Occupational Therapists, and from 2006 to March 2012 was Vice President of WFOT. There is one personal note I'd like. Nobody seems to ever remember that Anne was the very first manager, executive director of the Voluntary College of Occupational Therapists in Ontario back in 1983, and I was her chair. So, Anne, come forward. Congratulations.
I had a whole bunch of other words to say, but whatever Archie said, ditto. Same graduation year, same feelings, good things. The only thing I would like to do is paraphrase the Molson Canadian rant. I am an occupational therapist. Je suis ergothérapeute. Merci.
This is an amazing year for me because all my old buddies are getting awards. And I didn't have anything to do with it. It's an arm's length process, totally objective, correct? Okay. The CAOT Award for Leadership in Occupational Therapy has been established to recognize and honor the exceptional contributions of an individual occupational therapist who has been in the forefront of activities which provide strategic leadership and direction for developing the profession. We are pleased to honor Margot Patterson with this prestigious honor this year. Dr. Patterson has been at the forefront of a new vision for and practical approaches to the highly strategic area of interprofessional practice and education. Her work has contributed to expanding frontiers for fieldwork and classroom education in Canada, and her academic research has led to new ways of understanding clinical practice in occupational therapy. Closer to home, she has been a strong mentor to students, emerging researchers, and new faculty members, contributing to a new generation of occupational therapy leaders. Her ongoing contributions to the field of occupational therapy have advanced the profession on both the world stage and at home and merit great recognition and thanks. Congratulations, Margot. Lord, what it is to be like a leaking tap, you know? Yeah. I cry at the Hallmark advertisements, and that's really a bad thing. I would like to introduce now, with great pleasure, Juliette Picard, President of the Canadian Occupational Therapy Foundation. Juliette, would you please join me on stage? This is the way.
C'est avec grand plaisir que maintenant je vous présenterai les récipiendaires des prix et bourses de la Fondation canadienne d'ergothérapie. When your name is called, please come on the stage, and will you remain on the stage until all winners have been announced. Doctoral Scholarship to Noémie Dahan Oliel. bourse doctorale, Marie Grandisson. Invacare Master's Scholarship, Christy Spears. Community Rehabilitation Occupational Therapy Scholarship, Marie-Hélène Raymond. Goldwyn Holland Scholarship, Cindy Malachowski. Merita Derby Mental Health Award, Nadine Larivière. CAOT Future Scholar Award, Prix de la Relève en Recherche. The recipients are from University of British Columbia, Laura Blacador. Université de Sherbrooke, André-Jeanne Baudouin. Université du Québec à Trois-Rivières, Marjorie Desormeaux-Moreau. The recipients of the University of Ottawa and the University of Toronto have not yet been identified. COTF Research Grant, Gail Teachman. The following awards are granted by the provincial associations. From Manitoba Society of Occupational Therapists, Ed Grisbreck. Da James. Pam Warner. Nova Scotia Society of Occupational Therapists, Stephanie Anthony Brown. Voici nos récipiendaires de la Fondation canadienne d'ergothérapie.
Well, now it's time for the Fellowship Award. The award has been established to honor outstanding contributions and service by an occupational therapist over an extended period of time. Recipients of the Fellowship Award are Fellows of CAOT and are eligible to use the credential Fellow of the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists, or FCAOT. All recipients demonstrate consistent and outstanding contributions to the profession of occupational therapy in many ways. And our 2012 Fellowship Award goes to Sandra Hobson. I have a few things to say, you know. I have something to say again. Will you wait a minute? Calm, calm. Sandra has been dedicated to clinicians, students, and everyone at her school and faculty, and professional associations and community, and her efforts are really quite unprecedented. She's always available to accept new and ongoing challenges and to share knowledge and expertise. We can think of no other candidate who is more deserving of this prestigious award at this time from her national association, for whom she has been an incredibly dedicated volunteer and continues to be one. I am so glad that I'm here to give you this award. It's a pleasure. And now, I'm pleased to present the 2012 Dr. Helen P. Leveconte Award, which honors an individual who has made an exceptional contribution to the profession of occupational therapy through volunteering with the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists. And now calm, I'll say the name, but hold your horses until I'm done. The recipient this year is Mary Manojlovic. Yes, yes, okay. No, just a minute. Mary is a consistent and outstanding contributor to the profession of occupational therapy in so many ways. Whenever asked by the professional association, Mary is always ready to speak on behalf of occupational therapists and to advocate for the profession and the work of our national organization. Under Mary's strong leadership, she has guided many occupational therapists to have a voice and advocate for clients who need our services. She is a tireless worker and always seems to have the energy and the motivation to do what needs to get done. She leads by example. She continually encourages volunteerism and involvement by other occupational therapists in their national and provincial associations. This endless source of strength has also been a source of inspiration for many others, whether they are starting off in their profession or have been in the field for many years. Mary has shown that she is a determined and dedicated advocate on issues which could potentially greatly affect occupational therapists and the practice of the profession, and generously offers her time and expertise without hesitation. She is always a strong voice, and her dedication to the development of the profession is a source of inspiration for all of us. Mary, it's an absolute pleasure to present this to you today. Massive debate here, whether in fact she is allowed time to speak. She's saying she doesn't think she wants to. So that is maybe a sign of the self-effacing behavior that often is the case here. So God bless, take care. Okay, now the final announcement of the afternoon is where we began. And that is the Muriel Driver Memorial Lectureship. And once more, I'll say it's the most prestigious award. It is always with great anticipation that we await the announcement of next year's recipient. And it's a true honor. I'm going to change things around a little bit here so people don't know yet. It's a true honor for us to acknowledge her as our next Muriel Driver Award winner. She will present her lecture next year at the 2003 annual conference in Victoria. Now, 2003, holy crap, where the heck was I in 2003? Males, right? Is that what you say in French? Anyway, that's the only swear word I know. I'll be happy to learn some more if you care to give them to me. Anyway, at last I will be very proud to say, come to the stage, please, Dr. Marcia Finlayson. Thanks. Photographs will be taken in the next little while, but we know how cumbersome that can be if we do it one each. So I congratulate everyone of the CAOT and COTF award recipients. And just to repeat the fact, it is because of your tireless efforts and commitment to leadership, both individually and collectively, that the profession of occupational therapy in Canada can stand proud, and continually more so as time goes on. I ask all award recipients to stand and be acknowledged for one final round of applause. Okay. I am now going to shut up, and I'm going to ask Martine and Andrew to come and make a few announcements.
I think Andrew's going to start now.
Well, I think we all need a drink. And which brings me to my next topic. Pub night tonight. Just want to remind everybody that starting at 7, the Students' Committee have organized a night at St. Patrick's Pub. You have the information. Many of you have tickets already. It's very close. It's about a 10-minute walk. And I think it'll be lots of fun, and I hope you can come. The other thing, on a slightly more serious note, is tomorrow morning at 8:30, I believe it is the plenary that CAOT has organized about dying with dignity. I think that it's going to be remarkable. I think it's timely, whether one works in the area or not. I think it touches us all. And I think that a wonderful panel has been arranged of individuals to make us think about it. In fact, they each will speak briefly, but then the idea is that there is an exchange with those present. And as well, there will be a simultaneous translation from French to English. 3 of the panelists will be speaking, making their comments, answering questions, and so on in French. But it will be universally accessible via the simultaneous translation, and I can't recommend it highly enough. I hope to see you there in the morning.
Merci. Alors, la bière s'en vient. La bière sera bonne, and we promise to behave tonight, so I'll come. Alors, vous êtes tous invités demain au forum Mourir dans la dignité. Vos contributions seront très appréciées. Et demain, restez jusqu'à la fin de l'après-midi. There are more surprises.
C'est tout?